excuse me, Bernie Sanders doesn't know how to talk about black people.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
Jonathan Capehart. First of all, I have to admit, I actually trolled the hell out of him today. And not on purpose. It really wasn't on purpose, John. You just didn't read sarcasm in the tweet. I said people like Joy-Ann Reid and Jonathan Capehart know about as much as being poor as I do being a white woman, but somehow they get on television as experts and speak about it as experts. I guess he thought that was a compliment and didn't read the next tweet because he liked it and retweeted it and shared it with all of his fans. And then all of a sudden, I guess he went and read the next one that really let them have it. And then he unretweeted it and unliked it. It was funny to me. I didn't try to troll you. You just, you trolled yourself with that one. But here's the thing. Jonathan Capehart and Joy-Ann Reid took to Twitter last night and they wrote and they talked about it on their show or whatever, and really got on Bernie Sanders about his comment about not understanding what it is to be black, because a lot of white people don't understand what it is to grow up in the ghetto, or to, he gave a litany of things. And so Jonathan Capehart's conclusion is that he doesn't know how to talk to, actually, I want to read an actual clip of it, that he doesn't know how to talk to black people, right? And he's saying his premise on that is simply because black people aren't connecting with Bernie Sanders, which I'll unpack. I've already unpacked, but I'll unpack it again. The dumb thing about this article is that it's not anything about the substance of what he says. It's about the way he felt about Bernie Sanders calling or speaking as though black people are in the ghetto. And that's pretty much the sentiment that a lot of people have been expressing today. They're like, oh my God, don't you realize that there's a lot of black people who don't live in the ghetto? Well, yes, there are black people who do not live in the ghetto. But when you consider the actual data that 27.4%, almost 28% of black people do live in poverty, disproportionate to the amount of black people in America. And then you add on top of that, the majority of black people in the middle class are actually living hand to mouth, check to check, right? That if they miss a single check, they will go under. And then the vast majority of Americans in general don't have $1,000 of savings. When you add those things together, the reality of it is that black people in particular are in an economic dire position. And that there are the ghettos of America. I don't care what you call them, right? What if he had said the hood, if he had said the block, you guys would have been mad with him too. But the ghettos of America are filled with African Americans. Can we start there? Yes, there are a lot of black people who do not live in the ghettos, but there are a lot of black people, disproportionately so, that are living in the ghettos, that are living in poverty, that are born into child poverty, that go to the worst schools in the world, that are in the worst economic condition in the United States. And I'm going to show you the game that they played with it before I go too much further. But I just want to address that there are black people who are in such poverty that people like Joy-Ann Reid and Jonathan Capehart would not understand their existence any more than I understand what it is to be a white woman in America. But yet they get on television and act as though they are the quintessential black people and can speak on behalf of blackness. Oh, Bernie Sanders has a minority problem. Bernie Sanders can't connect with black people. Bernie Sanders, no. Bernie Sanders doesn't connect with your bougie asses. Bernie Sanders connects with people who are struggling economically. And this is what they try to rob black people of in order to get a criticism of Bernie Sanders. They rob black people of the reality that most of us, quite a few of us, are either living in poverty or we're living check to check. And most of us would benefit from the economic policies of Bernie Sanders. They rob us of the opportunity to even explore that because they understand that they can distract us with Bernie Sanders just doesn't know how to talk to black people. That's what pisses me off the most about this, is that they put black faces on television who, I don't care whether they can. Listen, I would venture to say that they did not grow up in poverty. I would gamble. I would make a good gamble. I would bet some good money that neither Joy Ann Reid nor Jonathan Capehart or anybody else that they put on television for Barack, especially if they went to Ivy League school, they did not grow up in poverty. I would make that bet. But even if they did, they have been so far removed from it that they have completely disconnected themselves from the economic conversation about what it takes to get the average American out of poverty and into the middle class. I know this and I assert this because they are completely deflecting the black community from ever entertaining the one candidate that's willing to change the economic paradigm in America such that it benefits the average American, especially the poor and the impoverished, which African Americans are disproportionately so. I'm going to need another drink. And so they are so far disconnected from the economic reality of what it is to be black in America. No, I'm sorry. Yes, I do understand that some black Americans are making $1 million a year. But I also understand that there are more African Americans who are living on minimum wage and would need and would benefit from a $15 minimum wage. Yet you want them to be worried about the fact that Bernie and the Bernie bros are not equipped to speak prolifically on the state of white supremacy, white privilege, and race relations in the United States of America. So we should focus on that and completely forget about the conversation that they're having economically that would be beneficial to African Americans, disproportionately so, because African Americans are disproportionately impoverished. So going back to my comment, they are so far, even if they were born in poverty, they are so far removed from poverty that they are willing to exchange political expediency for the plight of people that are in poverty right now. Somebody try to chastise me on Twitter and say, how dare you minimize, you don't know their story. They could have been born in poverty. If they're born in poverty and they're behaving this way, distracting the conversation from an economic conversation that would be beneficial to black people and white people and other in poverty, then shame on them. Because if you were born in poverty or born living check to check, hand to mouth, then you should understand the difficulty and the amount of intense work that you have to do, and the amount of good luck that you have to have, and the amount of amazing talent you must be born with just to break away from poverty. Ask me how I know. I wasn't born in the ghetto, but I was born at the very bottom of the middle class where our lights could be cut off on any given day of the week. And this was in a period where you know, cost of living was a lot cheaper than it was now, than it is now. You guys just heard my neck pop. So I understand what it is to actually, and you know what? Yeah, I do talk about it. I talk about it because it actually shaped a lot of my thinking and the way I actually interact with the world, was because my first experiences in the world was such that I could not get anything I wanted. I had to get only what we could get. I couldn't get brand new clothes. I had to get hand-me-downs. I couldn't get something in the grocery store. We had to go to the WIC and the food pantry. And so that shapes and it wires your brain such that you never really forget what it was like to be that way. And even though we have enough money now to go out to eat, you know, that's why a lot of poor people are overweight, because one of the big things that you get to do is that you can go eat some food, even though you couldn't get brand new clothes. You didn't really care about clothes not fitting because you couldn't get clothes in the first place. But what you could do is you can afford to go eat. And so if any of them who are on any of these black faces, I'm coming full circle. If any of these black faces are on television and they are trying to play you with this identity politics, that we should be concerned because Bernie Sanders doesn't know how to communicate with black people. Jonathan Capehart, you don't know how to communicate with black people. You would not survive 5 minutes in some of the neighborhoods that the average black person grows up in, lives in, and goes to school in and actually go through. Period. So while you're trying to lecture Bernie Sanders about not knowing how to talk to black people, you would not survive 5 minutes, my brother. But more importantly than that fine detail is the fact that you are distracting. You are a intentionally distracting force in this election, deflecting and keeping poor African Americans from ever considering a candidate that would actually address the systemic nature of poverty. You want everyone to talk about systemic racism. Fine. We can talk about systemic racism, but you can't talk about systemic racism without talking about systemic poverty. And these distracting forces have the same skin pigment as me. I have less beef with Hillary. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm fond of Hillary Clinton because I love political prowess and she's got a lot of it. I'm fond of Hillary because she is a political gamesman. Like, she does things politically that I actually admire, not from a moral perspective, but from recognized game perspective. Hillary doesn't bother me. She could bother you. I'm not telling you nothing. I'm just telling you, Hillary herself doesn't bother me. It is all the people around her who are trying to redefine our values to fit her. Those people bother me. Who bothers me the most are the black people, her black firewall, who surrounds her and capes for her and protects her and attacks Bernie Sanders to the detriment of the black community, because there are more black people living in the ghetto than living in the suburbs. And so while they're fixated on the fact that Bernie Sanders said ghetto, the reality of it is that there are too many black people living in the damn ghetto. But that's not important. What's important is that Bernie Sanders doesn't know how to talk to black people. I'm so tired of it. I'm sorry, guys. Listen, one thing I'm tired of more than anything else are these economically privileged black people dictating to economically underprivileged black people the terms of the engagement that they should have. And before you run off and say, well, stop saying that they don't know what's best for them, because they do. Number one, Democrats have always said that poor white people don't know what's best for them, especially poor white people who vote for the Republican Party. That's number one. Number two, the reality of it is if you're working 2 or 3 jobs just to survive, you don't really have time to parse the different economic and political nuances of your existence and your participation in this neoliberal economic paradigm. You don't. So it's not as though anyone, me at least, is talking down to black people and saying, you don't know what you're doing. What I'm saying is, you better wake up, because there is a group of black people who are doing well enough not to have to worry about money. And so if they're doing well enough to not have to worry about money, they are actually able and privileged enough to only worry about identity politics, microaggressions, and the subtleties of white supremacy that remains in society. And they do. White supremacy remains. So you make enough money to be able to worry about that. While the majority of African Americans, along with other Americans, white Americans, Hispanics, some Asians, I don't know what that meant right there, but whatever it meant, have to worry about making rent this month, have to worry about how they're going to pay childcare, have to worry about how they're going to pay health care, and have to worry about how they're going to pay tuition if their child even gets a chance to go to college. That is the majority of Americans. Period. disproportionately so African Americans. So no, we don't have the luxury of only worrying about race and microaggressions and white supremacy and political correctness. We actually have to worry about, can we afford food tonight?